Thank you very much indeed for staying with us all afternoon. And I wanted to look at this summary section just as more wearing an industry hat, really, and somebody who has come from outside the nanomaterials sector. And so looking at Safe by Design from an industry perspective, it needs to be quantified in its aims and what benefits it is going to bring to companies. So is it going to help you reduce R&D time? Is it going to reduce your costs? Does it allow you to get faster to market? Can you preempt regulatory challenges? And obviously in safer products, I think almost goes without saying, safer products both for consumers and the workforces involved in producing them. And of course, better consumer acceptance. Europe has walked a road before in the GM crops sector that it wasn't prepared for and it didn't deliver well. And the consequence was that an entire sector stopped operating or never started operating in Europe. And that was much less about the science and much more about the preparation and the implementation of that as a business. And nanomaterials, while I don't think it will take the same route, runs the risk that it makes a very easy headline if too many assumptions are made about consumer acceptance of products. And so having a look at it from an industry perspective, within the NanoRig 2 project, which has not been particularly presented here today, there are a number of case studies running with companies that look at the implementation of Safe by Design principles into practice around existing products and processes. And this is really what we're looking at, not only their alterations in business and scientific approach as a result of looking at process and life cycle from a Safe by Design perspective, it's also looking at how it alters their business modelling and the financial impacts of implementing Safe by Design, which I think is incredibly important to be able to point at and say, it will cost me this much to do this, it may delay one process by this many months, but it will accelerate another process. So all of these companies and case studies that you can see on screen before you now are currently being assessed and coming towards the end of the assessment in terms of the impact of implementing Safe by Design. So we look forward very much to be able to quantify how Safe by Design modelling and platforms impact company practice, and how that manifests itself, hopefully, in more saleable products for a longer period of time, particularly from a European perspective, where Europe is not going to go for the mass manufacturing, pile them high and cheap market. It's got to go for the niche high value market. And that plays very strongly into the role of high quality nanomaterials and nano enabled products. So it all comes down to playing to the strengths of Europe and how it creates value throughout the whole production chain, from the early stage research through to the long-term market uptake, not only in Europe, but around the world. So if I look at Safe by Design, if I was a company, the questions that I have are, this is moving beyond my standard risk governance that I would do. So how am I going to quantify how this works for me? So will it prolong the market life of my product? Am I looking at having a product for 20 years now instead of 15 or 10? Will it enhance the visibility and value of my product and my company? So are partners more likely to come to me because they know I have a reliable, high quality product that has a very evidence-based development chain? My customers, are they going to buy it more because they know they are putting something that is more reliable and has a better track record into their own products? And investors, which is really where it comes down to early stage companies, is, am I investable? And it links quite closely to the insurers as well, in that if you can demonstrate very strongly that you have a long-term viable commercial product, you are going to get more money into the company at the earliest stage to develop that product. So it really comes down to, am I going to have a product in the market in the long term? So, and with Safe by Design also, we already referred to it earlier, it's like, can I accelerate development to market or reduce costs going to market? All of which open up new markets and raise the chances of having a more successful product in those markets. A very key question that we've discussed before, and I think one that needs to be very strongly addressed, is how do I get recognition for this? Because at the moment you have standards, you have regulations, none of which are directly linked to safe by design. So the task force to create an agreed standard or agreed definition of safe by design is a good starting point for the nano sector. And then how are we going to enable companies to use it to add value? Are we going to create a standard? Are we going to create a certification process? How can that be used in a visible way by companies? And of course, a question that will come from many places is, how do I integrate this into both my strategy and my implementation? Because the tools are complex, they're still under development. I don't really know where I'm going to put them in my company yet. And I think there's another step to take where we look at exactly how this becomes more integral and a natural part of company planning and implementation. And so finally, I think, hang on, I'll just get rid of that off my screen. Finally, I think these questions they are in the next phase of Safe by Design development. We've done a huge amount on early stage modelling and creation of tools, and I think it now is maturing naturally to say, well, how does this progress from a robust scientific basis to something that becomes integral to company practice? So in many ways, I really enjoy looking at Safe by Design and comparing it to other sectors such as the pharma sector, which has in a lot of ways gone through this already through the clinical trials process and the aim of essentially killing off as many unsuccessful products as possible, as early as possible in the chain. So for me, it's fascinating to watch the nanotech sector moving now towards that phase and understanding how it controls its destiny more strongly. So I will be quiet because I could talk pretty much all day on topics like this and go and see what questions we have. So we had, can you comment on how the organisations discussed today would interface with ANSI, ISO, nanomaterial standards committees? Which I think is a very interesting question. Kelda's had to leave us, but I would be interested to see if we have any of our other presenters who could comment on that. It may be that we have to have that as a written response from speakers after the webinar. No, I think, to be honest, that is quite a specific question, because I know there has been discussion on integration of Safe by Design down the standards pathway, but it's quite a challenging pathway to address. So, in fact, that was the only question that's piled up. So I think, and in fact, Eva has contributed to say that that is a long answer, so it is best in writing. So what we will do is put together an answer to that and email it to everybody tomorrow when we send you the slides. So I think I have really enjoyed this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed. So what I am going to say now is a really big thank you to all of our speakers who allowed themselves to be bullied into a 3.5-hour format out of a two-day workshop. And I think they've done a really great job. I would really like to thank you, all of the delegates. We had, as I said, we had 110 registrations. We had sort of 70 people on the webinar today, and I know that a lot of other people will be waiting for the recorded version of this also. And we will follow up with you tomorrow with all of the slides. We will edit the recording of this to make it slightly more beautiful than the long play. And we will put that online for people to listen to and view. So, and we would of course like to keep you engaged in how we move forward with Safe by Design maturation. So we will ask you a few specific questions after the webinar to find out the best steps to take next, whether they are more webinars, what particular topics are useful to you going forward. So I think And I can also share with you our terrible secret in that at the very beginning of this webinar, we did not actually have any access to the internet as it was switched off for 2 hours this morning without explanation for general maintenance in the area. So the very first session was delivered to you through the power of my mighty mobile phone, which was terrifying, but this is one of the reasons why I'm now incredibly relaxed. So I would say thank you once again. And we look forward to speaking with you tomorrow and getting your full feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you'd like to do next. So thank you all very much indeed.